Combat depth. It's a term used to describe how many meaningful choices a game gives the player. If game A gives the player 10 choices but 9 of them suck, it has shallow combat. If game B gives the player 5 choices and at least 4 of them are useful, it means game B has more combat depth than game A. And game A should feel bad about itself. Shin Megami Tensei V or SMT V has more combat depth than Persona 5, even if it is made by the same developer. I have beaten both games multiple times, and in this video I'm going to break down exactly how different is SMT V from Persona 5 and why a player would prefer it if they are a fan of good combat design. Starting with customization. In Persona, your average persona is going to look something like this. You have an ability, few damaging skills, some passives, and some buffs and debuffs. You can completely change each of these skills and traits by using fusions and skill cards, which is pretty solid. But coming over to Shin Megami Tensei, this is what you are greeted with. You once again have an ability, damaging skills, some passives, and some buffs and debuffs. But in addition to that, you also have unique skills, which are skills completely unique to a specific demon. You have affinities, which affect the damage and how much mana an element skill uses. You have Magasuhi skills, which are basically ultimate abilities which you can use when you fill up the Magasuhi bar. And I know there are unique skills in Persona 5 as well, but most of them are endgame special fusions or locked behind DLC. That is not the case with Shin Megami Tensei. This is Daimon, a demon you can get at level 7, and even he has a unique skill. So not only can you make a demon exactly as you would a persona, but you have additional ways to customize your demons. It is not a gimmick, it is a required part of the game. For example, I was stuck for the longest amount of time at the very first boss of SMT V. I didn't know what to do, but I fused demons until I found Mermaid. I only used her initially because I thought she looked hot, but as it turns out, she is a great demon to use against the Hydra, as her unique skills deals multiple instances of ice damage, which the Hydra is weak to. I know the system sounds complicated at first, but the game does give you plenty of tutorials to make the exact demon you need. So as you can see, Shin Megami Tensei V already allows you much more customization in terms of how you want to pre-plan a fight. The second thing you are going to notice when you play SMT V is the difference in resource management. In Persona, the main resource you are going to be managing is time, since you are always in fear of missing out on content if you aren't careful with how you spend your days. But in combat, the only resource you really have to watch out for is mana, and even that becomes a non-issue once you are past the first dungeon of the game. This is not the case in Shin Megami Tensei V. Your priorities in resources are completely different. First of all, you aren't worried about mana. The game just gives you a ton of it by running around the map, and even if you can't find any by walking, you can simply restore it using money. The more important resources you have to manage in SMT is Glory and Magasuhi. Glory is the equivalent of skill points. Throughout the map, there are these limited number of glowing apples and tiny creatures that give you skill points. These skill points can then be used on game-changing passives for the protagonist, like unlocking more skill slots, carrying more demons, or allowing your demons to use items. But as good as that sounds, the glory you find is very limited, and the shopkeeper won't give you any discounts, no matter how beautiful you think your twink ass looks. However, while rationing your glory is a chill and thoughtful activity, deciding how to use Magasuhi is not. Magasuhi is basically your ultimate ability, and choosing which Magasuhi skill to use out of the dozens you find is hard, especially when you learn that if you die, you lose all of your progress and go back to your last manual save. You think it would be easy, as for most situations you would be using the skill Critical Aura, which turns all your hits for the current turn to be critical hits. But what do you do when you don't know the enemy's weakness? If you get repelled, you lose all your turns. Are you sure this powerful attack is worth it when you know you can just revive your whole team and heal them to full? These are the types of questions that pester you when your Magasuhi bar is full. If you're a player who holds the special move, this game is going to be a nightmare for you, because Shin Megami Tensei V basically taunts you to use the Magasuhi every turn that it's full. You can either deal a massive chunk of damage and absolutely nuke the boss, or you can lose all your turns and look like an absolute bozo. I'll just tell you, the sheer satisfaction you gain from using Magasuhi skill is awesome, but the sheer stupidity you feel after wasting it is uncontested. And of course, we cannot talk about combat depth without the actual battle strategies. This is going to be the biggest difference between the two games' combat. In Persona, your usual strategy goes like this. You use Heat Riser to increase your DPS stats, then you use Debilitate on the boss. After that, you double your damage done by your next attack and hit the boss using Charge or Concentrate. This is generally how the combat flows in Persona 5's endgame, as most Persona 5 bosses don't have a weakness, so you don't really need to test what they are weak to, and all status ailments are blocked so you can't even have fun. I mean, I wish there was more to it in terms of strategy, but combat really hasn't been the focal point of Persona games since Persona 3. Now, with Shin Megami Tensei, you have a ton more options in how you want to fight. I can't list all of them, so I'll just go over my favorite and probably the most used strategy. Before even beginning a boss fight, you make sure your Magatsuhi bar is full, then right at the start of the fight, you will spend a turn using Spyglass to reveal the boss's weakness and resistances. Now you target the weaknesses to gain more turns. With the blinking turns, you will use support skills like Heat Riser and Debilitate, and maybe fish for a cheeky status element if the boss doesn't resist it, or use a block item that matches the boss's attack. Then you get hit 4 times because the boss gets a crit and you die. Yeah, listen, Shin Megami Tensei can be brutal. I'll be honest, it's like the Pokemon of JRPGs. It doesn't matter how well you prepare, luck can always screw you over. But if you don't die, now is the fun part, as you're free to choose and decide which Magatsuhi skill you want to use to absolutely chip away at the boss's health. Most of the time, it is going to be Critical Aura that you use, as it is the most consistent way to deal massive chunks of damage. However, it is completely up to you on how you want to approach your fight. Whether you want to spam your skills, whether you want to spam your items, anything goes as long as you manage to defeat the boss. Just know the hesitation is defeat. Shin Megami Tensei is not a franchise you should expect to go easy on you. These games are punishing as hell, and the punishment has become pretty much a brand staple at this point. Which is the last thing that I want to discuss, which is how these games tackle death and punishment. If you die in Persona 5, you lose very little progress. Most likely you are just going to be sent back to the start of the dungeon or the beginning of the boss fight, which isn't too bad. Shin Megami Tensei on the other hand shows no mercy. Unless you are making a save every 5 minutes, you can and you will lose hours of progress, and sometimes the death will feel completely unfair. Take this glowing red demon for an example. This guy has a chance to use a completely unblockable attack that will kill your character instantly. These situations are inevitable. At the start, you might complain saying, this is unfair and this is bad game design. Trust me, I've been there. But it is exactly the type of progression that Shin Megami Tensei expects you to make. With every death, the game teaches you something on what not to do. Next time, when you see a massive bird trying to kill you, you run away. Next time, you don't leave a demon weak to dark in front of a boss that uses dark attacks. Next time, you learn to save the game every 5 minutes. And next time, you won't f with a glowing red demon for no reason. Shin Megami Tensei's design philosophy relies on high risk, high reward. But more often than not, the reward is not worth it for the risk you choose to take. Getting good at Shin Megami Tensei games doesn't come from never dying. It comes from learning from your deaths. So don't feel bad when you get killed by a boss. The game gives the player enough choices that no matter what, there will always be an option open for you to progress the game with. This feels hard, but this is exactly why I love Shin Megami Tensei 5's combat. It might not be for everyone. Hell, I wouldn't want Shin Megami Tensei 5's combat in a Persona game ever, as I play Persona for a completely different reason. But yeah, like the video and subscribe for more video game analysis, only on the CritZy channel.